Hello, my dear friends. A colleague shared with me that an irate congregant asked him, Rabbi, why are we still saying Tehillim after 15 months, 3 times a day? It's genug shoin. That Yiddish means it's enough. So there's 3 responses to such an inquiry. The first response, which the rabbi didn't say, but perhaps he should have, is, I can't believe you're asking such a question. Are you heartless? Have you no feeling? Are you made out of stone? If it was your family relative, if it was your parent or your child or your spouse or your sibling that was a hostage, would you also ask that question? Why don't we stop saying Tehillim? If you yourself were a hostage, or if you were a member of the IDF, would you want people to stop saying Tehillim? Or if you were a parent of a member of the IDF? That's the first response. The rabbi perhaps wanted to be a little bit more diplomatic, so the rabbi gave a second response, and that is, he said, you know, there have been thousands of miracles that have taken place in the last 15 months. And some of the big miracles are the destruction of Hamas and the leadership. It was taken out, and Hezbollah and Assad's government fell in Syria, and Iran has been weakened. Who knows how many of those miracles didn't happen because of the Tehillim that we've been reciting? And, it reminds me of the famous humorous story of the fellow who's driving in Manhattan and he can't find a parking space. I told the story many times, but they say after 2 years you could tell a joke over in a sermon because people won't remember. I know it's such a good joke, maybe you remember even after 2 years. But the joke is that the guy's driving in Manhattan, can't find a parking space. He turns up to the heavens and he says, God, I have a deal that's worth $2 million. Please help me find this space. And if you do, I'll be so appreciative. I'll come to learn Daf Yomi every day, and I'll give tzedakah, and I'll daven 3 times a day with kavanah, etc., etc. And then all of a sudden a car pulls out. The man dashes into that spot, and he turns up back to God. He turns up to God, and he says, Rabbi Shalom, thanks a lot, but I don't need the favor anymore. A spot just opened up for me. And that's just the mentality of this fellow. There's all these nisim happening, and so he probably thinks that the IDF, they're so smart and they're so talented, and their intelligence is off the charts, and all the things that they've done and the weapons that they have. This is what we call kochi v'otziyadi. We did it with our power, the IDF and the Israeli government. But in the end, everything depends on the Ribbono Shel Olam. Everything hinges on the HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and therefore, this fellow's thinking, thanks a lot. I don't need you to answer my tefillos. It's just the opposite. It's because the Ribbono Shel Olam answered the tefillos. That's why all these miracles have taken place. There's a third response that I think is important to make, and that is not only are the miracles that we observe a result of our Tehillim, but it goes beyond that. There's a famous question posed there's a medrash that says, the question is posed by the Beis Halevi, Yosef Dov Soloveitchik, who was the Rav of Brisk, who lived 150, 200 years ago. The medrash says, Moshe Rabbeinu in last week's parsha says to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Moshe approached Paro and he said, let the people out of Egypt. Paro said, why should I? Who's God that I should listen to him? He says, people are lazy. I'm gonna increase the amount of output that they have to make every day with the bricks and the mortar. So Moshe Rabbeinu was very upset, and he turns to God, he says, why were you evil to these people? Why did you send me? Apart from the time you sent me to Paro, things have gotten evil and worse for the people because of you. So why did you send me? So God responds in this week's parsha, in Parashas Voeirah. God says, I was the God of the Avos, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. I made promises to them, and they didn't see the promises fulfilled. So I'm disappointed that you are not like the Avos. So Moshe Rabbeinu, when he speaks to God, he says, "May us basi al Paro." From the time that I came to Paro, may us is past tense. So it means from that time that I came to Paro, you have made things worse. Moshe uses the word us in 2 parshas later, 3 parshas later in Bishalach, when the sea opened and they went through the sea and they escaped from the Egyptian army. And then the army would drown, the Egyptians will drown in the sea, in the Yam Suf. So the Chumash says, Oz Yosher Moshe. Then Moshe gave praise to Kadosh Baruch Hu, and they recited the Shira. So the Medrash connects the word Oz appears both in last week's parsha, may Oz basi al Paro, from the time I came to Paro, and in Oz Yosher, then they will sing. It's the same word, Oz. So the Medrash says that Moshe sinned by saying Oz, and he fixed this, he corrected what he had done by saying Oz Yosher. So the Beis Halevi, who was the Rav of the Brisk, Yerusha Ber Salvation, 150, 200 years ago, he asked, what does one have to do with the other? It's the same word, Oz, but how did he fix it? By introducing the Shira with Oz Yosher, how does that fix the sin? The sin was that he didn't have confidence in HaKadosh Baruch Hu. How is one connected to the other? So I would suggest that the word Oz is very unique, because Oz is both, the Medrash says, Oz could be past tense and future tense. When Moshe said, may Oz basi Paro, it's past tense. From the time I came to Paro, that's past tense. Oz Yashir is future tense. Then Moshe says, then Moshe and the Jewish people will sing. And Rashi says, why is it future tense? It should say Oz Sharo. They did sing. So Rashi says, because it's a remez to Tchias HaMesim. It's a remez that there will be a resurrection of the dead. What does that have to do? What does the resurrection of the dead have to do with the Shira? It's because even though they saw tremendous miracles, but there were still so many loose ends. To look at all the babies that died in Mitzrayim in the mortar that the Egyptians, or they threw them into the mortar, or they threw them into the Yor to drown them. Look at all the suffering that the Jews endured for 210 years. So even though they saw the miracle of Yetzias Mitzrayim and the sea opening, but there was still unanswered questions. When will all the questions be answered? When will there be Tchias HaMesim? When there'll be the resurrection of the dead, and then God will reveal His divine plan and explain why everything transpired. So that's why the Chumash says Oz Yasher. So Oz in the Shira is future. It reflects that which is still unknown. So when Moshe said Oz, may Oz basi al Paro, people say that all the time. People say, "Why, God? Why are you doing this to me?" People come to me and say, "Why am I being punished? Why is God so angry at me? What did I do wrong?" That question reflects a tremendous mistake that people make, and that is they examine what is happening to them only in a sliver of time. They look at it at the moment. You can't understand God's plan by looking at just one moment. You have to look at the whole continuum of time. Sometimes God's plan is not revealed for hundreds or thousands of years. When there'll be Tchias HaMesim, everything will be revealed. But even sometimes, even before Tchias HaMesim, we get glimpses of God's plan, but it could take hundreds of years for us to see that. I'll give you a terrific example that I and others have mentioned many times. 1492 is a day that lives in infamy, and that was the day that there was Gerish Sepharad. The Jews in Spain were expelled. By who? By King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella, two Rishayim. The suffering that they endured was unbelievable. It was their whole lives were shattered. The same King Ferdinand and Queen Isabella dispatched Columbus the same year, 1492, on the ship to discover America. America became the safe haven for the Jews. Before the Holocaust and after the Holocaust, there became a new center of Yiddishkeit in Chutz La'aretz. And many of the Jews in the diaspora, and many of the Jews that were expelled from Spain, eventually they made their ways through different parts of Europe, and their descendants eventually made their ways to America. So it seems that it's no coincidence that the very same king and queen of Spain in the same year, 1492, they brought such tremendous destruction. But at the same time, the Rebbeinu Shalom engineered that through them there would be ultimately tremendous salvation for the Jewish people. So if somebody in 1492 had said, "Why is God doing this to me?" So you could have said to the person, if we were alive then, we could have said, "Come back to me in 500 years when there's the Holocaust, 500 years later, and I'll tell you the answer to that question." We don't. We look at things in life with such a narrow focus. You can't understand God's ways that way. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he sinned by saying Me'oz Basi Aparo. He was using Me'oz in past tense. He was taking a sliver of time, one slight thing, one small event that took place, and he's asking all these questions. How could you do this, and why are you being evil to the people? He corrected it by saying Oz Yashir, and he recognized Yashir is when there will be Tchias HaMesim, that the divine plan will first be revealed in its totality when the Mashiach will come. That's when we'll understand that all of Jewish history will be revealed to us at that time, and therefore the Oz in the future tense was a tikkun for the Oz. It was a correction for the Oz that was in past tense. So there's so many things that have happened in this past year and a half. Some of the things are miraculous, but some of the things are tragedies, enormous tragedies. What took place on October 7th, and every day it's horrible. You look at the Israeli news. Another Israeli soldier, 2 soldiers, 4 soldiers, 6. It's horrific that they fall in battle. And the amount of soldiers that have been wounded and missing limbs and impaired for the rest of their lives, the suffering of the families. We could easily ask, why is all this happening? Lama Hariosa. But we have to live with the Rebbeinu Shalom took Moshe to task, that he asked this question, and he says, look at the Avos. The Avos, they didn't know the answer to they had questions. Why is God doing this to me? And there were promises made, and the responses were not revealed to them. It will take hundreds of years till the response will become apparent. So, but the others lived with Emunah. They understood that human beings, they don't have the whole picture. They only understand what's right in front of them. That slight sliver. So we have to look at the events of the past 15 months in the same way, but we have to remember that ultimately everything is being orchestrated by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It's all hashgacha pratis. It's all. It's not. There are shlichim. The Israeli army is a shliach, and the diplomats, and all those things. But ultimately, everything is being run by HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And if we fail to be able to understand the reason for this and the reason for that, it's because as human beings we're very limited. And so that's my third response to this person that asked that question. You know why we're saying Tehillim? Because as human beings, we don't understand why things happen, but we have to place our faith in HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and we have to continue to daven to Him with tremendous kavanah that in Mirz Hashem, that ultimately it should be for our good and for our benefit. And let us hope in Mirz Hashem that our tefillos will be answered. It shouldn't take hundreds of years. Our tefillos should be answered as soon as possible, and we should see the complete release of all the hostages, those that are still alive and those that have perished. Their bodies should be released, and there should be shalom in Eretz Yisrael, and the anti-Semitism around the world, which is just off the charts and horrific. It should all end, and our tefillos to HaKadosh Baruch Hu should all be fulfilled. Thank you for listening, and have a good Shabbos.